The battles and fight scenes in Star Wars movies have been one of the reasons why fans love the franchise so much, and in the thick of these fight scenes are X-Wing starfighters. Welcome to Star Wars Deconstructed, students of the Force and acolytes of the galaxy. Whether you're a Jedi, Sith, or somewhere in between, join us today as we explore some of the top variants of X-Wing starfighters used in the Star Wars franchise. We'll start off with the T-65 X-Wing starfighter. The T-65 X-Wing starfighter was the Rebellion's shining star. It wasn't just any fighter, it was the hero that took down the Death Star. It was super speedy, mega maneuverable, and equipped with shields tougher than a Durasteel wall. It was the go-to choice for Rogue Squadron, and for good reason. This bird wasn't just about looks, it packed some serious gear. Shields, check. Hyperdrive, check. An R2 unit for fixing stuff and navigating through stars? Double check. Plus, it had proton torpedoes in its arsenal, making it the go-to ship for rebel raids into Imperial territory. Luke Skywalker's claim to fame? Destroying the Death Star using this very ship. Throughout the Galactic Civil War, this X-Wing was the backbone of the Alliance's fight against the Empire. It held its own against those fancy TIE fighters, showing that rebels could bring the heat when they needed to. Rogue Squadron practically lived in these X-Wings. They only switched ships for super special missions, like when they needed ion cannons. This ship was so iconic that it became the symbol of the Rebel and New Republic forces, kind of like how the Empire had its TIE fighters and Star Destroyers. The T-65 X-Wing came with 4 super cool Tamenbach KX-9 laser cannons and double tubes for proton torpedoes. Sure, it could switch up to concussion missiles, but those were a hassle to install. The torpedoes were the real deal, perfect for the X-Wing's all-around missions. Back in the early days of the Galactic Civil War, the Rebellion had a small stash of these babies because they cost a pretty penny. Even during the Battle of Yavin, most X-Wings, including Luke's, only carried one set of torpedoes. To nail those shots, Pilot had this slick A&Q 3.6 tracking computer. It was like having a cheat code, 98.7% accuracy, no less. Now these laser cannons weren't just pew-pew machines. They had different modes, single fire for precision, dual fire for teaming up, and quad fire for an all-out barrage. And stutter fire added later during the Yuuzhan Vong War for rapid fire spectacle. Let's talk speed. This starfighter had 4 Incom 4L4 Fusible thrust engines that made it zip through space and atmosphere. And the bonus? It had a hyperdrive. Unlike those TIE series fighters, this one could hop into hyperspace all on its own. That meant rebel squadrons could do their thing without needing a giant carrier ship. Perfect for their hit-and-run tactics, giving the Empire a taste of their own medicine. Remember the Battle of Yavin? Well, Luke Skywalker nailed the Death Star using this very ship. Wedge Antilles rocked it too, blowing up the second Death Star at the Battle of Endor, alongside the Millennium Falcon. But fun fact, despite all the hype, 70% of those X-Wing missions during the Galactic Civil War were snooze-fest reconnaissance gigs. They only went all out when they knew it would be a show-stopping success. These babies weren't just for the rebels. Outlaws loved them too, guarding spots like the Freeport on Shador. But the Rebel Elite, Rogue Squadron, they were die-hard X-Wing fans, using them almost exclusively. Now, the New Republic was all set to switch to the E-Wing, but some design glitches delayed that plan. Rogue Squadron, being the X-Wing fan club they were, stuck to their guns. Eventually, the New Republic rolled out the J-series of X-Wings just before the Yuuzhan Vong War. They amped up the proton torpedo load and juiced up the engines and avionics. Jedi pilots got their hands on these and gave the Yuuzhan Vong a taste of stutter fire during the invasion. The Galactic Alliance stepped up the X-Wing game during the Killik-Chiss conflict, introducing the XJ-5 and the stealthy Stealth-X. Those Stealth-X ships were like ninjas in space, hard to spot, but a giveaway when launching torpedoes. By the time of the Second Galactic Civil War, the Galactic Alliance was rocking XJ-6s, and the Rogue Squadron was back in the game with XJ-7s. On to the T-65B X-Wing starfighter. This was a craft made by Incom Corporation, and it was a real hero in the Galactic Civil War. It was the Rebels' go-to ride, famous for being quick and nimble in fights. This ship was tougher and packed a harder punch compared to the Empire's mass-produced TIE fighters. What made it stand out was its top-notch design. It was the ultimate all-arounder in space battles, being super agile and shielded. Plus, it had a smaller target area, making it tricky for enemies to hit. Unlike many other starfighters, this was a champ, both in space and in atmosphere. The T-65B X-Wing was no slouch when it came to weapons and defenses. This bad boy had 4 laser cannons, one at the tip of each wing. They too could shoot in solo, pairs, or all at once, giving the pilots lots of firepower options. Plus, it had 2 proton torpedo launchers hidden under its belly. For protection, it had a deflector shield generator at the back. This shield could be adjusted to cover the craft and even extended along the S-foils when they opened up for attack mode. And if that wasn't enough, there was a sensor jammer that messed with the enemy sensors and missiles. The pilot sat in a super tough cockpit right smack in the middle of the ship, shielded by a sturdy canopy made of transparent steel. This canopy had a wider view than TIE fighters and even could darken automatically to protect the pilot's eyes. There were safety measures as well, like explosive charges to blow the canopy clear if the pilot had to bail out. Its systems were top-notch as well. 4 powerful engines gave the X-Wing its amazing maneuverability. They could tweak the thrust between the engines, swing through tight curves with some high-tech gyroscopes, and even shoot thrust forward to change direction. Plus, they had sneaky infrared suppressors to hide their hot exhaust. Powering this beast was a cryogenic power generator at the center of the ship. It had capacitors in the S-foils to store extra power for the engines. And let's not forget the hyperdrive system, which is essential for those long-distance jumps. With an astromech droid as a co-pilot, handling navigation and repairs, this ship was all set for space adventures. The droid could even take control if things got real hairy. The T-65B X-Wing wasn't just a starfighter, it was a game-changer in the Galactic Civil War. Initially dreamed up to tackle those enormous Imperial Star Destroyers, it became the Rebels' pride and joy, drawing inspiration from older starfighters like the Z-95 Headhunter and the ARC-170. But here's the twist, it was actually meant for the Empire first. Incom Corporation cooked up this beauty for the Imperial Navy, but things didn't go as planned. The Empire chose the cheaper TIE series over the X-Wing, leaving Incom with a bunch of unsold starfighters. Lucky for them, the Rebel Alliance swooped in and said, hey, we'll take those off your hands. Remember the Battle of Scarif and the Death Star plans? Yeah, X-Wings played a crucial role there, flying alongside Y-Wings to help Rogue One snatch those plans. Then came the big one, the Battle of Yavin. Luke Skywalker, along with a bunch of other X-Wing pilots, took on the Empire's Death Star. It was a tough fight, and most pilots didn't make it, but Luke's shot into the Death Star exhaust port saved the day. These X-Wings weren't just Rebellion exclusive. Even the Partisans, led by Saw Gerrera, had their hands on a few. They decked them out with their own style and used them for their own missions. As the war raged on, X-Wings were everywhere the Rebels were. From Hoth's Echo Base to Cloud City on Bespin, these ships were in the thick of it. Luke even trained with Yoda, zooming around in his X-Wing. And let's not forget the Battle of Endor, where X-Wings were a crucial part of the Red Squadron, led by the ace pilot, Wedge Antilles. They took down the Death Star 2 mobile battle station, making a significant dent in the Empire's plans. Even after that, at the Battle of Jakku, X-Wings were there, fighting hard. One of them got shot down and lay preserved in the desert for nearly 3 decades. These starfighters had seen it all, from daring rescues to epic battles, marking their place in the history of the galaxy. And now, we talk about the T-70 X-Wing Starfighter. That was an upgraded version of the classic T-65B. It was faster, fancier, and a bit more complicated. Made by Incom Freitech Corporation, the Starfighter was a big deal for the New Republic Defense Fleet. It had better guns and could handle all sorts of battles. Dogfights, taking on big ships, you name it. What made it cool were the S-foils. They let it shoot from a wider range, and those 4 KX-12 laser cannons, they were versatile. Shoot single, double, or all 4 at once, as we've seen before. And the classic dual proton torpedo launcher with different ammo options. But politics got in the way. The New Republic wanted to tone down their military stuff, so they passed production to a few well-connected companies. Eventually, the T-70 got swapped out for the fancier T-85. After its gig with the New Republic, the T-70 found new purpose with the Resistance, battling the First Order about 30 years after the Big Endor showdown. The T-70 X-Wing was a big deal during the New Republic days. It started small with just one prototype before the Battle of Jakku. Yrica Quell took it on a spin to Coruscant while the big battle went down. But hey, they weren't just for the big leagues. They ended up in the hands of planetary defense forces and even got some love from folks in the Galactic Senate who supported the Republic. Then when Leia Organa kicked off the Resistance against the First Order, these X-Wings became the backbone. Poe Dameron, flying his Black One, became a legend leading the charge from the Resistance base. These bad boys took down Starkiller Base and held their own in battles like the one at Dakar. Black One even got a boost with an experimental thruster pod. Sure, the newer First Order TIE fighters were slick, but the T-70s had their own charm. Faster, pricier, and a tad trickier to handle, but they could take on any fight, from starfighters to those giant capital ships. And they kept going strong, even stepping up for the big showdown at Exegol. We mentioned that they got replaced by the T-85, so let's talk about that. The T-85 X-Wing Starfighter, also known as the New Republic X-Wing fighter, was the next-gen model after the famous T-65B X-Wing. It was a starfighter that the New Republic Defense Fleet rocked during the First Order's rise and later got passed down to the Resistance to keep fighting the good fight. Now let's dive into what made this bird tick. The T-85 had some cool gadgets under the hood. It boasted 4 5L9 Fusible thrust engines that could push it to speeds hitting 1,300 km per hour and 120 mglt. Plus, it had a Class 1 hyperdrive, making those jumps across galaxies super smooth. One pilot was at the helm, but they weren't alone. An astromech droid was on board to lend a hand, or shall we say claw. And it wasn't just speed, the Starfighter came equipped with deflector shields, sensors, and a nose that housed some top-notch Carbanti sensors. It was about 15.68 meters long, 13.65 meters wide, and stood at 2.7 meters tall, a decent-sized powerhouse. For weapons, this guy had 4 KX-14 laser cannons on the S-foils, set up in that classic X shape. It also packed Krupek's MG-7B proton torpedo launchers for those moments when lasers just wouldn't cut it. The old magnetic flash suppressors got the boot, but some pilots went the extra mile and customized their own. The engines got souped up too, giving it better thrust and maneuverability for some slick moves in space. The cockpit was cozy at the back with a snub nose. The T-85 was armed to the teeth with targeting systems like the Fabritech ANR 1.3 tracking computer and the IN-63B Sightline holographic imaging system. To keep the pilot safe, it had a Chempat deflector shield generator, an ejector seat, and life support. And it didn't skimp on supplies, carrying enough for a week-long adventure. If you ever spotted one, some of these babies were decked out in gray with snazzy blue trim, proudly labeled Republic Navy in Aurebesh. The T-85s had quite the journey through the galaxy, serving the New Republic Defense Fleet like a loyal guardian. Admiral Akbar, a key figure, pushed for their design when he noticed the T-70s getting a bit long in the tooth. They were out there defending space lanes, chasing down troublemakers like pirates. Commander Poe Dameron flew these sleek machines with his Rapier Squadron, and boy did they have their hands full. There was a wild chase through an asteroid field, dodging asteroids left and right. Then there's a showdown with pirates in the Mirren sector, where Dameron's fighter gets snagged by an ion pulse. But fear not, BB-8, the trusty droid, came to the rescue, rallying the squadron to save the day. But then things took a turn. Dameron moved on to lead Black Squadron, swapping his T-85 for a snazzier T-70 named the Black One. Meanwhile, Kazuda Xiono's team, on a mission from the New Republic Command, flew these T-85s. They had a run-in with the First Order's Major Elric Von Reg, a real space hotshot. There was a bit of a tussle, damaged crafts, and some smart maneuvering that forced Von Reg to retreat. Xiono's craft got towed aboard a CR-90 Corvette, but Commander Dameron swooped in for the rescue. Then came the devastating blow. The Hosnian system, where most of the T-85 fleet was chilling, was obliterated by the First Order. Only a handful survived the catastrophe. Commander Dameron, ever the jokester, teased General Organa about ordering more T-85s right before the Battle of Crait, as the Resistance was scrambling away from the First Order's rage. After that tough ordeal, the Resistance was in dire straits, barely holding on. The First Order wasn't taking it easy either. They were scrapping captured New Republic ships left and right. General Organa wasn't one to sit still though. She sent a team to Bracca, a scrap planet, to salvage what they could. And guess what they found? Yup, a lone T-85, a precious find in the midst of chaos. If you enjoyed the video, please watch the next one and subscribe to the channel.